At 0741 local time, 30 kilometers off Cape Tarkhankut, 3 Ukrainian Magura drone boats are racing through the Black Sea swells at 42 knots, 4 hours deep in water that has swallowed every boat like them for a year. Unknown to the Russian helicopter crews closing in on them, this morning's hunt doesn't end the way it has always ended, because bolted to their sterns is something no drone boat has ever carried into a fight. And whether it works hangs on a problem that beat Ukrainian engineers for 7 months. Then an antenna on a lattice mast sweeps across the little convoy. Once. Twice. Both times the returns drown in the clutter of the sea. Swells hurling the radar's own beam right back in its face. 3 low hulls buried somewhere inside the noise. Under that mast, a Russian operator gets nothing he can hold and keeps the antenna turning anyway. 3 years of this war have taught him that empty and clear aren't the same thing. Neva-B, bolted to a stolen gas rig in the middle of the open sea and built for exactly one job: catching small things on the water. Ka band, a millimeter wave beam sharp enough to pick a periscope out of the chop. 200 targets at once, a boat at 15 kilometers. Capacity was never this radar's problem. Contrast is. On paper, those 3 holes are already caught. They aren't. The sea is throwing back 1,000 false returns a sweep, and 3 real ones slip through. The operator isn't missing anything. The sea is just louder than the holes it's hiding. So the boats run the seams between the picket rings, hiding under a shield no radar beats, the curve of the earth itself. Look at one of them while it runs the gap. 5.5 meters of fiberglass drawing less than a meter of water. A water jet instead of a propeller, so nothing churns below the waterline. $250,000 a copy, with 800 kilometers of reach. New York to Detroit, with fuel to turn around. Less than the price of a suburban house, hunting a fleet. Not one track hardens. A watchtower planted in the middle of a field you have to cross can't stop what it never sees. Behind the pickets, though, the safe lane runs straight through water where the real threat doesn't emit anything at all. A weathered steel sphere rides the swell beside the lead boat, 3 meters off the beam, gone between one wave and the next. No radar caught it. Nothing aboard even knows it was there. On the Ukrainian mainland, far beyond the horizon, an operator's hand freezes on the throttle because he caught the ghost of it in passing, and the ghost was plenty. A naval mine, and not the kind that stays put. Both sides seeded this stretch with moored contact mines, Hertz horns studding the casing, chemical triggers that fire the charge off a single touch. Storms rip them loose and set them wandering. Riding nearly awash, lost in the chop. At 42 knots, satellite lag eats whatever warning the camera gives. Minesweepers spend weeks clearing lanes like this. These boats get an hour, like sprinting through a room somebody scattered bear traps in. Except the traps move. So the swarm throttles down and picks through the belt, trading away the only currency it can't mint more of: time. And halfway through the mine belt, the second layer arrives on top of the first. The lead boat flinches, swings degrees off heading, holds the wrong course for half a second, snaps back. Its navigation just lied to it. Out here, that lie has teeth. A 1-degree error in open water costs nothing, and a 1-degree error in a lane threaded with drifting Hertz horns is how a mission ends without anyone ever learning why. The boats are now doing 2 things at once: feeling through a minefield with a map they can't trust. Look at the flat dishes on each hull, the thread the mission hangs from. Every command and every frame of video climbs from those dishes to a satellite and back down to operators far behind the front line. And Russian electronic warfare pours noise into the approaches the whole way in. Lose that link here and the boat is alone, at full throttle, in a minefield. Flying a kite from another country, in a thunderstorm. The crews know the difference between a flicker that passes and a fade that doesn't. And for 3 long seconds, nobody in the control room breathes. The link flickers, degrades, and holds for now. The third layer doesn't sweep or jam. It carries a gun, and this time, the gauntlet collects. An engine note rolls across the swells ahead. Diesel, throaty, working. Out of the half-light, a low silhouette crosses the gap 2 kilometers off the bow, sweeping a searchlight in slow, patient arcs. The swarm throttles to a whisper, and the trailing boat cuts wide to screen the other 2. Every card in this matchup belongs to that silhouette. Here's the ugly part. Nothing these boats carry can answer a gun on the water. Every kilogram of payload is committed to something else entirely. Against a deck-mounted heavy machine gun, a drone boat has one defense: don't get found. If the searchlight holds a hull for 3 seconds, the machine gun does the rest. The trailing boat gets found. A lookout snags its wake in the flat gray light. The searchlight locks on, and the heavy machine gun hammers across a kilometer of open water, rounds walking through the swells, then tearing through fiberglass. The third boat shudders, sheds speed, and comes apart at the waterline in a bloom of spray and burning fuel. All of it undone by a belt of ammunition that costs less than dinner for two. The gun that just collected belongs to a KS-701, one of the patrol craft Russia sweeps these approaches with, a 12.7mm mount on a fast hull, crewed by men with a grudge. Drone boats destroyed KS-701s off Chornomorsk twice in 2024, on this same coastline, and this round went to Russia. Good lookout, fast gunner, wrong prize. While they circle the wreck and radio up a win, 2 more hulls slip past in the murk. The point of the mission still lashed to their sterns, and that radioed victory is a gift. A coastline now convinced the threat is already burned. 2 boats now, and every layer left between them and the Cape only needs to spot the single thing a drone boat can't stop making. High over the approaches, the aviation net already rattled awake by drone attacks on Sevastopol hours earlier, a crewman on a Russian patrol plane spots it. A white arrow scratched across gray water, miles long, pointing southeast. He keys his radio, and the call lands. See that white arrow? That's wake. A planing hull at speed drags a rooster tail of churned foam behind it. The hull hides from radar, and the wake surrenders to any pair of eyes at patrol altitude, sneaking across a snowfield while leaving footprints. The men who drew this route knew the wake would show, and accepted it, because a boat slow enough to hide its wake is too slow to survive everything else out here. The observer doesn't shoot. He doesn't need to. He shadows the wake from an altitude the boats can't answer and phones home a bearing. And from this moment, the mission clock belongs to Russian aviation. And the numbers are ugly. The Hips need 30 minutes of flight time to reach that bearing. Sunrise needs 17. And every minute of daylight paints those wakes wider. On an airfield near Sevastopol, rotors start turning. And the machine spinning up has ended this story the same way every time. The lighthouse on Cape Tarkhankut has thrown its beam over this water for 200 years of Black Sea mornings, empires included. It has never lit the way for a fight like this. Rotor thump hammers across the water before the shapes resolve. Then 2 helicopters rip out of the brightening gray and split wide, bracketing the swarm. Mi-8. NATO calls it the Hip. 13 tons of Soviet-designed workhorse, 250 kilometers per hour flat out, a crew of 3, and enough fuel to hunt all morning. Over this sea, it's been the last thing a Ukrainian drone boat ever hears. In the lead cockpit, the gunner charges his PKT, a 7.62mm machine gun mounted in the cabin door, with a gloved hand that's done this 100 times, because those 2 aircraft are the reason boats like these keep vanishing out here. Russia tried everything else first. Interceptor missiles cost more than the boats they were chasing. Warships kept ending up as the prey. Shore guns couldn't reach. Helicopter crews had been hunting drone boats since the summer of 2023, and by that December, Moscow made it official, standing up dedicated squadrons in Crimea for the job. The one machine that's cheap by the hour looks straight down onto the water and carries guns. The gunner leaning out of that door doesn't think of any of this as combat. He thinks of it as pest control. The bracket closes like a hand, and to use a fly swatter, you have to lean in close. The lead hip drops, dumps speed, settles onto a firing line, and the first burst walks a stitch of splashes across the water 1 boat length behind the lead Magura. What the gunner didn't know, what no Russian helicopter crew over the sea had any reason to suspect, was that the boat he wasn't shooting at was the one that mattered. Look at how the helicopter had to fly to take that shot. Hitting a 5.5-meter boat with a door gun means you have to get down near the water and wash off your speed, then fly a straight line right past your target. That geometry parks a heat-pumping aircraft low and slow, a couple of kilometers from its prey, leaning over the fence to swat the hornet's nest. Safe every time anyone has ever tried it. The Hornets have never once had stingers. Behind the PKT, the gunner corrects his lead and settles in. His second burst creeps closer. Splashes bracket the lead boat now. Near misses stitching the swells while the hull jinks hard. Carving white scars across the water, the dawn is starting to color. Watch those splashes walk and you can see the duel inside the duel. The gunner has to lead the boat, guess the jink, and hold his burst for the fraction of a second the geometry allows. Deflection shooting from a moving helicopter at a sprinting target the size of a rowboat. Hitting a running rabbit with a garden hose from a moving truck. Each pass buys him seconds of clean track. Then the run resets, and the helicopter loops around to spend them again. None of it draws an answer. Everything on the boat's rails points up and waits. Higher and wider, the wingman orbits the flight with his own gunner scanning the water. Doctrine states one aircraft shoots while the other watches for the move nobody expects. Fragments spray off a near miss. The lead boat shudders, hull chipped, still running. In a control room on the mainland, one operator throws his boat through evasive cuts that snap the hull sideways off the wave tops. Beside him, coffee gone cold at his elbow, the second operator does the hardest job on the net. Nothing. He holds his boat steady in the chop, missiles cold, and lets his partners soak up every gun run because the shot he's waiting for needs a boat the gunfire hasn't found yet. One stray burst through the rails behind him and the whole program ends right here. Again. Sitting on your hands while tracers hunt your partner takes more discipline than any maneuver in the book. This morning, it's the entire plan. And in the trailing hip, something small won't sit right. The wingman keys the intercom. The boats aren't running for the coast. A year of these intercepts and the boats always run. These two are circling, almost holding, like they're waiting for something. His flight lead has an answer ready. Confidence always does. Damaged, probably, or lost with a drop link. Back in May of 2024, a Ka-29's gun shredded the first missile-armed Magura anyone had ever seen before it launched a thing. Moscow's aviators have been living off that win ever since. 1-0, undefeated, never even challenged. Like a guy who won one bar fight in college and still brings it up at every reunion. Drone boats don't get second chances, and that certainly pulls them closer. This is a rematch, and only one side got the invitation. The hips tighten the racetrack, each orbit a few meters lower than pride alone would explain. Closer, lower, slower. Each time a pilot pulls power for another pass, the exhaust plumes flare. Twin columns of superheated air shimmering against a cold pink sky. That shimmer pours out of the exhaust below the rotor head, where two TV3 117 turbo shafts, more than 2,000 horsepower apiece, dump their heat beneath the blades. And the helicopter hangs low over near-freezing water, the coldest backdrop the Black Sea can offer. To an infrared eye, that's maximum contrast, like two blowtorches strapped to a school bus. With every gun run, the helicopters burn brighter to an eye nobody aboard knows exists. The crews can't see their own heat. On the trailing boat, something under a glass dome has been chilling toward its working temperature. Each of those gun runs was also a lesson, and the Ukrainian operators took notes. The racetrack shape and the altitude the pilots favor, and above all, the point in every orbit where the lead aircraft settles into straight and level flight. The hunters have spent 20 minutes measuring the boats for wreckage. The boats have spent 20 minutes measuring them back. On the trailing Magura, a seeker head slews under its glass nose, tracking, following the lead helicopter through its turn. Coolant hisses somewhere under the glass. In the operator's handset, a low growl rises. The rails don't move. Nothing on the deck moves at all. What just opened its eye on the back of that boat is an R-73, an air-to-air missile built for fighter jets. NATO calls it the AA-11 Archer, the dogfight missile that scared the Pentagon into rebuilding the Sidewinder. Ukraine's main intelligence directorate, the GUR, the same outfit whose Group 13 drone boats sank the Corvette Ivanovets, pulled it off a jet and mounted it to a boat. Behind that glass sits a seeker cooled so hard that a warm engine 3 kilometers away practically screams at it. It reads the world as contrast, warm shapes against cold nothing, and it's all aspect, so it doesn't need the tailpipe. Any angle of a hot machine is enough, an eye that only sees warmth opened onto a cold sea, and the sky above it holds two bonfires. One problem, the missile can see the helicopter. The launcher can't point at it. The boat heels hard, the operator swinging the bow itself toward the geometry, hull carving through the sea while the seeker holds its track through the turn. The rails stay frozen. Somebody welded them that way, on purpose. Standard aircraft pylon rails bolted to the stern, missiles hung upside down, no turret, no stabilization, nothing on that mount moves. None of it is needed because the seeker can look up to 40 degrees off the missile's nose and track on its own. A launcher that can't move, carrying an eye that never stops moving. The boat doesn't aim at the helicopter, it just gets close, and the missile does its own aiming. Every other Navy builds trainable launchers and stabilized mounts, whole radar directors just to point them. Ukraine skipped the shooting list and welded a rail. The turret is made of software. Total cost, $0. The expensive part was never the aiming, which leaves the hardest problem, the problem that stalled everything for months. The hull climbs a swell and slams off the back of it. Bow up, bow down. And under the glass nose, a seeker head fights for its life. Dragged off the helicopter, clawing back on, dragged off again. Remember the sea that hid those boats all the way here? It's charging for the favor now. Every swell that buried them in radar clutter is bucking the one eye that has to hold still. In the headset, the growl surges and falters with each wave, while gun splashes keep walking the water around the lead boat. If you look here at how this boat is riding, and then the eye under that glass nose, that eye sees the world through a soda straw. Before launch, the seeker has to catch the helicopter inside that soda straw and keep it there. That means a hull pitching in ocean swells. On the move, under fire, through a satellite link with lag baked into every correction. Hard on land, brutal at sea. The months between these missiles first appearing on the Magura in May and this dawn went into cracking it. Fire control and stabilization, and a missile rebuilt to survive salt spray and sea air. The SeeDragon, threading a needle on a trampoline by video call. And the tone has to hold, because a lock that drops after launch spends half of the boat's arsenal on a splash. Then the growl settles into one long, steady note. Lock. 7 months of failure just came down to one note holding steady. The operator doesn't fire on the first tone. He rides through one more swell, listening to the note hold while the helicopter settles into the exact heading the last 7 passes promised it would take. In the lead hip, the gunner lines up another pass. Routine. The 8th of the morning. His pilot flies the same altitude as the last 7 runs, flying the pattern nobody has ever punished, while below him the sea keeps its secret for 4 more seconds. Launch. The missile rips off the rail in a cone of white flame that outshines the sunrise across half a kilometer of sea. Watch the nozzle as it climbs. That's the trick. A fighter fires this missile at 800 kilometers per hour and hands it a running start. A boat fires it at 0, and fins need airflow to steer. So at 0 airspeed, they're just decoration. So the R-73 steers with thrust vectoring, vanes sitting in the rocket exhaust, deflecting the plume itself, wrenching the missile through a turn that would rip the wings off anything with a pilot aboard. By motor burnout, barely off the second rail, 105 kilograms of missile is already doing better than twice the speed of sound, tracking uphill toward the heat with a 7.4 kilogram warhead riding up front, steering by aiming the fire hose instead of turning the wheel. The price is reach. 30 kilometers from a fighter at altitude becomes a short-range ambush tool from sea level, which is why this trap only springs on a hunter that walks in on its own, like a mouse trap that only works if the mouse decides to take a nap on it. The gun run geometry that made the hip lethal is the same geometry that just delivered it inside the only envelope where the boat wins. 2 kilometers. The missile pitches over and hunts, and the hip's warning arrives from a direction no helicopter crew has ever had to watch. Below. Flares. The hip pumps decoys, burning stars tumbling toward the water, each one hotter than the engines they're protecting. 6 ASO-2V flare dispensers, 3 in each fairing on the fuselage tanks, emptying in pairs. A flare seduces a heat seeker by burning brighter than the target, but a falling firework doesn't move like a flying machine, and the SeeDragon's modified seeker holds its lock straight through the decoy cloud, like throwing your wallet at a mugger who wants your car. The missile doesn't care. 4 seconds. The flares tumble away below it, ignored. 2. The proximity fuse wakes up alongside the fuselage, and the expanding rod warhead opens the machine like a can. Impact alongside the engine bay, and the sky over Tarkhankut is 1 aircraft emptier. A $250,000 boat just defeated a $15 million helicopter, and the missile that did it cost less than the fuel the hip burned looking for it. Second launch, another cone of flame rips off the water, and fragments hammer through the wingman's tail boom like gravel in a dryer. He dumps the rest of his flares and brakes hard for the coast, trailing heat. Ukrainian intelligence snatches his radio traffic out of the air on the way out. The launch came from the water. Something detonated right alongside him. And then 4 words no hit pilot over this sea has ever had to say about a boat. Some systems have failed. He limps home to an airfield that just learned the Black Sea shoots back. Within days, Ukraine's GUR confirms the world's first. A surface drone had drowned a combat aircraft. Every crew that flies low and slow off this coast now has to assume the water below is armed. And a fleet that already lost its flagship to a country without a navy just watched its last safe altitude disappear. If you enjoyed this video, watch how Ukraine destroyed a plane Russia couldn't afford to lose. Bye for now.